Go ahead and call village board to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and the minutes can reflect the role of the various trustees, department heads, and other officials. Let's move on to item 3. Entertain a motion for the approval of the 15 village board and the file, the 718 finance committee, the 81 finance committee, the 720 park and rec board, 726 plan commission, and minutes as presented. Second. Motion is second. As all comments, questions, clarifications on the minutes. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Anybody in the audience wishing to be heard on a non-agenda item? Let's move forward. Item 5. Any information? Oh, we have a appointment. Yeah, here we go. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Charles Kramer as board representative on the joint library board.
I'll move to approve.
Motion is second. Comments, questions?
Yes. What's in there right before chairman?
Chair, and he has a residence in town as well as in the village. He started, he was on as the town representative, since then has moved into the village. My understanding, there was some change in the bylaws to allow him to still represent the town.
Yes, there's quite a few moving parts, but that is a very good summary. 2 ownerships remained as the town representative, even though the primary ownership was in the village. That said, it is now basically being recognized that his primary ownership is in the village, and he's being named as a village representative. Therefore, the town will have to fill their representative.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Let's move on to item 6, resolutions for the action items. Item A is a resolution in recognition of Kurt Government. I think you guys may have read about them. I know Kurt has a monthly article in League of Wisconsin Municipalities magazine. So basically a recognition of public service. It's a resolution, takes an offer motion second.
I'll offer.
Motion.
Second.
Offer motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That resolution passes. We'll sign that and send that off. Item B is report of the plan commission. That is a resolution commissioning approving the final plat for Riverbend Meadows subdivision phase 3 be adopted. Again, it is a resolution.
I'll offer.
Motion. Second.
Offer motion is second. Final plat was approved. No significant changes from preliminary plat. Any questions? Offer motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Resolution passes. Move on to item C, report of the finance committee. Item 1 is a motion to approve Police Sergeant Peter Morgan, Police Officer Andrew Inker to attend an out-of-state training conference November 14th through 17th, 2022 in Scottsdale, Arizona. Be approved.
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 2 is a motion to adopt the updated village of Grafton compensation plan and performance evaluation system manual with scenario 2 to become effective January 1st, 2023.
I'll make a motion.
I'll put it on second, just to get it on the table. Jesse, you want to kind of go over the details of things?
Absolutely. So in an effort to basically maintain competitiveness in the marketplace, as discussed at the finance committee, several communities in the area have openly advertised steps, not based upon performance, simply on tenure, to move through their pay scales. That said, what I brought forward to the finance committee for consideration is an update to the compensation plan for the village, which would move employees through their respective pay scales with an annual performance-based adjustments. All adjustments under this update would be tied directly to the performance evaluations and not simply just tenure. And also accomplishes moving folks through their respective pay scales in a timely manner. That said, the scenario 2, as mentioned in the report, the motion, includes a 4% lift, well, in the first quartile, a 4% lift in the second quartile, then stepping down to a 2% lift in the third quartile and a 2% lift in the fourth quartile. Those would accompany the annual wage adjustment factor being kind of a quasi cost of living adjustment on January 1st of each year. The percentages that I just mentioned would be based on the anniversary date, but also, or awarded at the anniversary date, but based upon performance evaluation scores. There's also a merit facet to the compensation system, which was updated with stronger language in that folks under the current system could score less than 100 and still receive merit and or COLA and or these first and second quartile lifts. That would go away. Folks would have to have a commensurate performance evaluation result in order to receive any of those lifts. Otherwise, they would be either not awarded or prorated accordingly. Also calls for a performance plan as needed, but also speaks to maxing out or hitting that top end of a pay grade, whereby should pay grades never be adjusted ever again, you hit that maximum, the red box system would come into play, where hitting that maximum by law, we as an employer can't pay outside of a pay grade, whether it's below or above. Therefore, any merit or wage adjustment factor or any other adjustment would have to be paid in a lump sum separately away from payroll. So long and short is, it is a much more performance-based system, stronger system that is being proposed, in that folks have to score at that 100 level and higher to get into merit and other adjustments. So that's a real high level look based upon the conversations at finance.
It was discussed at finance. It was, I think, the President Paul, you had kind of talked a little bit about financial impact.
Yes, actually I have that in my staff report. One moment. Scenario 2, coming out of the committee recommendation, would require $35,213, including benefits. So that's all in to implement for the non-represented staff.
That's 2023.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Tom?
Just to follow up on that, so the increase would be warned immediately on January 1, 2023, or still be looking for anniversary dates in order to follow.
Sure.
Versus what it-
Sure. There's actually three under our compensation plan. There's actually three different types of adjustments. That wage adjustment factor, or a nomenclature I'm used to, is cost of living. So that's that January 1st, right? Then there is the merit that is directly also tied to the performance evaluation. That is a percentage of the wage adjustment factor, or a percentage of the COLA. So to be, if the COLA is 2% and you score well in merit, you could end up with all in wage adjustment and merit a 2.25 or a 2.2, 2.1, but it's a percentage of that COLA. So it's the merit is a bit smaller. But then there would be this under this scenario 2, those, in essence, we'll call them anniversary adjustments, where you hit, or tenure adjustment, where you hit your anniversary date, and to continue moving through the quartile, it would enact these percentages that I mentioned before. But here again, that would be tied back to a performance evaluation having been scored or a score achieved that is commensurate of warranting that 10-year adjustment or that anniversary adjustment.
So are you doing that performance eval at the time of the anniversary, or are you doing it, or are you counting the performance for the prior year, or do you wait till the end of the year?
It would be based upon the performance evaluation that is done at the year end prior. So it'd be based upon that prior year's performance. Yep.
Does each employee have like goals and objectives and how do their supervisors work with them on that?
Yes. Yes, and they do range greatly. I have goals and objectives set by the village board. I set goals and objectives for the department heads as I sit down with them. The department heads and their supervisors sit down goals and objectives for frontline staff. Now, there's obviously varying levels of what those goals and objectives are, but yes, there are definitely, and it's set forth in our evaluation form as well.
Now, do they have a one-on-one with their supervisor during that year, like every 6 months, to say that they're going the right way or the wrong way?
Yes. First of all, I promote active engagement. If you see something, say something. You don't want to let it wait until that mid-year review. Be proactive. So I emphasize that with my department heads and onto the supervisory staff. Make sure you continue working with folks and mentoring as needed. But yes, there is the year-end evaluation. Then there's the goal setting or the planning form, we call it. And then at mid-year, you review that planning form as to the progress folks are making and or general performance conversations. But again, I emphasize that folks be proactive with that.
So as a administrator in your HR, are they involved at all, or it's just supervisors and workers?
It is primarily the supervisors and the workers. However, I am a check and balance where I do review comments that come through on the mid-year. I do engage. I have a monthly check-in, if not more so, with each department where I stop in their office and sit down and chat with the department head as to any performance matters going on, project updates, etc. And so I'm a check and balance on that with regards to the department heads. That comes through my office, and then the check and balance actually is finance and payroll as they process those, where if there's anything out of line or anything that could be questioned, but it really comes down to documentation and appropriate, whether it's on the positive side or negative side. Yep.
So if you come up, Jesse, with a possible wing adjustment yet, I heard the number 3%. Have a number there?
That is a goal. We are meeting with department heads later this week to get an understanding of what their requests are. And then next week, we're actually going to have a follow-up meeting with department heads to start getting those puzzle pieces to fit in the overall context of the budget. So I have a goal in mind of achieving a 3% in the confines of the budget, but I don't know until we're able to put that whole budget document together yet.
And so this goes for all non-union employees.
This is for regular full-time and regular part-time non-unionized employees, correct? Yep.
Including yourself.
No. It does not apply to me. I am not part of the compensation structure. My base wage was set as part of my employment contract, and any adjustments to that are set by the village board. The only adjustment that I am treated the same as non-represented staff is that January 1st wage adjustment factor or COLA. That is the only adjustment that is the same as other non-represented staff.
So you would get the 2, 3, or whatever COLA you come up with, you're gonna get.
It's whatever the village board.
In the budget, yep.
That's it. Thank you.
You had two other communities that you had comparables to. One was Germantown, which to me doesn't weigh a lot, the German County altogether.
It doesn't, it doesn't. I would argue that a position in Germantown is a close enough community where someone living here in Grafton to take a job there wouldn't have to move. That's I guess kind of my counterpoint to that. You're right. It is a different community. It is a different county. Absolutely. But that being said, somebody would not have to move from here.
Did the other communities call you back? Or you said you're left voicemail messages for them?
I did not get any further feedback from the communities other than those couple of examples that I was able to provide.
I personally just feel like this kind of came out of nowhere and there's pressure to kind of push it through quickly. And I just heard trustee Harbach say to Paul that we have to look for ways to save money.
This
Is
is,
there a timeline we have to get this through quickly?
there is not. It is being brought forward at this time. That way we could build it into a 2023 budget, which is exactly why the motion is stated to kick in and become effective for 2023. That's the reason for the timing of it. These concerns have actually been long held. I've been hearing similar concerns since I've come on board with regards to folks hitting that midpoint and not really being able to move past it. So in essence, when we advertise a pay range, folks get to a midpoint, but then they kind of get stuck there because our merit score is a percentage of the cost of living or wage adjustment factors. So it's fairly small. So outside of these additional tenure-based adjustments in those upper quartiles, there's very, very limited movement in that upper portion of a pay grade. So that was brought to my attention, and it continued to be a source of conversation, and I felt it appropriate, especially considering some of these very specific job ads that were provided as evidence showing, hey, there's some competitive nature here as far as retaining folks, much less recruiting folks. And so it is being brought forward at this point because, again, want to be able, should this be approved, be able to build it into the budget.
So you mentioned that the cost to implement would be about $35,000. And then I think I had also asked at the last meeting, what did you foresee like the yearly cost? I mean, going forward, I'm assuming that's gonna kind of multiply at some point. You know, it's gonna be 35,000 to start it.
Mhm.
And then every year thereafter, it, you know, those raises or those wage adjustments are gonna go up.
Sure.
Were you able to figure something out about that?
No, frankly, modeling that proved very difficult because there is the natural ebb and flow of our payroll, if you will, with retirements, with folks leaving for different opportunities, new folks coming on board, benefits as well. Some folks come on and take single, some folks come on and take family. It proved very difficult to model out what it might do over time. That being said, we already do budget in our contingency because, as you recall, we budgeted in contingency and then roll it into by department as all of these adjustments are carried out now. We already budget for half, 2/3 of the amount because of the system we already have. And so again, working with finance and payroll, I believe this is a sustainable program. And because again, we've already got our foot in the door with funding this type of program.
You know, my other concerns are that we didn't get any direct communities around us with information. And you did give us these two examples of certain positions.
Mhm.
But I think it would be really interesting to know what our communities around us, Cedarburg, Mequon, Fort Washington, Southville, are doing in relation to their pay scales. You know, the
Sure.
personnel schedule that we have, and it shows the pay scale, and it shows the 5 different increments.
Yep.
I think that would be interesting instead of just 2 isolated job descriptions.
Sure.
And I get that somebody didn't respond, but I feel like I need more information. What other communities are doing?
Currently, both Mequon and Port Washington are undertaking classification and compensation studies. So I have the understanding that either late this year or early next year, they'll be enacting all new pay grades as far as minimums to maximums. The items provided included a Port Washington advertisement, a Plymouth advertisement, and a Germantown advertisement. Again, communities close enough where folks working here in Grafton would not have to relocate. And that's kind of the scary part. Because if somebody wouldn't have to uproot their home and family and be able to move to a neighboring, a near enough community to be that much more competitive and move through the scales, frankly, as an employer, that's a bit scary to me. That provides plenty of our workforce, a lot of opportunities to pursue. But as far as overall pay scales, again, Port Washington is in the midst of redoing theirs, as is Mequon. I believe Cedarburg is status quo for the time being, but would adjust accordingly, is my understanding.
If I recall correctly, I've seen multiple times when you've shared pay scales, every time we look at doing changes to our pay grades, we have.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
other Neighbors, so I think that
I would disagree. I don't think I've seen a comprehensive wage survey, you know.
That's all we're, but that wasn't the point. The point was, do we get access to our community, neighboring communities' paid grades? That would be, so if you're talking about a comprehensive aid, search or whatever, that's valid, but that's.
We did an in-house review, I believe 2020, 2021 of our pay grades as compared to nearby communities as well as comparable communities, where we grabbed samples of classification and compensation studies from communities and then synthesized it into our own and brought forward. And at that time in 2020, 2021, showed our scales themselves were competitive. The minimums to maximums were competitive. Where we're starting to lose some of that competitiveness, though, is the fact that folks will get to that midpoint and stop. So this compensation plan update is actually that next step in helping to keep us, and I believe a fiscally sound step in keeping us market competitive, to provide an opportunity for our non-represented folks to move through a pay scale. Right now, our represented police officers have 5 steps, and they move through that each year, regardless of performance. I know Chief Caponera is exploring the idea of a performance-based system, but that's all collectively bargained. That's a whole different animal. And right now, the firefighter paramedics, that position that was created 2 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago now, they move through their scales annually. That is also tied to performance and certifications as they take paramedic classes. So there are available steps to them that they can really move through an entire pay scale. Whereas all the other non-represented folks simply can't. They hit that midpoint and really slow down, where it would literally take many decades. And I kind of showed that up on the chart, where because our structure, the minimums and maximums of all the pay grades historically gets adjusted annually. When that moves, that in essence wipes out that January 1st adjustment, and you're left with simply merit after the midpoint. So that percentage of that January 1st adjustment, that small percentage, that is the only movement you see once you're past midpoint. And that's really locking people in, not being able to move through. And so that continues to be a point of contention.
Any other questions? Yes, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I was just finishing up with this. No.
Not her, right?
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions for you, Jesse. Just so I'm clear with this. The performance reviews happen on the anniversary of the date of hire of the employee, correct?
No, they happen at year end. So December and into January, those performance evaluations are completed and scored out. That way we can calculate the merit payments.
So in theory, this would go into place, taking place this year or into 23 to affect 24.
So the 23, it would go into effect January 1 of 23. And the adjustments that would happen in 23 would be based upon December 2022 performance evaluations.
So in fact, it's going to take place actual fund
Throughout the year, correct, depending on the anniversary dates, these other adjustments. Yep.
Second thing I did really ask is, this has been a really challenging time for all of us in recruiting and retaining. So approximately how many employees have we lost? Our surrounding municipalities in the last year.
Most recently, we have lost 2 utility employees, one to Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District and one to the city of Port Washington. So to, in essence, a private company that contracts for the Milwaukee metropolitan area. And Bureau of Labor Statistics just showed in the Milwaukee metro area, wages, weekly wages have increased by 8% over the course of the last year. So again, that private sector is continuing to be very competitive, even with the benefits package that we do offer. But in that rate of pay, it continues to be outpacing us and much more competitive. The opportunity for the gentleman that went to Port Washington, I believe, was a facet of not only the steps, and this is from the exit interview that we conducted, not only the available steps, but also it was a promotion for that gentleman where there's more responsibility with the job. But there was an aspect that he noted in his exit interview that noted, yeah, there's room to grow. I've got steps and I know where I'm going.
So my other question to you, and perhaps part of our overall recruitment intention, I look at that as being a tool for being able to get the best and brightest into Grafton. How important is this to you as a have an arrow in your quiver for your department heads for recruitment?
Recruitment, definitely, because you can lay a map out and show somebody sitting down and talking to us how you could progress. That's definitely a tool. Quite frankly, as I sit here before the board this evening, with the way the job market is being private sector and the opportunities that are out there in many of the trades, but also the fact that I've literally lost a very good employee to a nearby municipality. Right now, I think it's a retention tool. That is where I sit, and I would say that in front of the board right now. The primary focus would be as a retention tool. Obviously, it will help with recruitment, I believe, but right now, retention.
So my final question is, on average, what do we spend in training and orientation? What period of time do we take to get to that point?
Sure.
Say that we hire a new, employee. Approximately how long until they're proficient at 75% or 50%?
Frankly, that depends on the position. We've been quite fortunate with applicant pools where we've got folks coming in with regards to public works crew persons, having a good, decent background. But that said, they've still got to learn how things are done here and that cyclical nature of the job duties. Utility, that's a whole different ball of wax. There aren't the tech school programs out there. People aren't coming to us with the DNR certifications. So that is part of that training and onboarding. We've got to get provide for those folks. Here in Village Hall, I can speak to the clerk's office. We were very fortunate in our last recruitment for a deputy clerk to find someone that actually came to us with some limited clerk experience. Again, there is a lot of training and onboarding because every municipality does it slightly differently, and we clearly do it differently than the private sector. So there's an investment in time there that would equate out to dollars and cents.
Exactly. If we look at perhaps 25% of that period of time for someone going from a new employee until they're at 75% capacity or being ready to do their job.
Yeah.
That could be 3 months, 4 months. And when you're looking at somebody who's got an average salary of $50,000 a year, you're looking at $12,000 approximately per employee, which really, to me, in turn of looking at $36,000 overall for our employees, we probably would make that up with retaining 3 employees here. Out of how many employees do we have?
Neighborhood of 90 to 100, regular full-time, part-time-ish.
Andrew.
Sure, I just want to share a couple of things based on the discussion tonight. This is a topic and a concern that I have brought to Jesse for several years now. I know it hasn't gotten to this level, but I've been bringing the concerns to him for several years, trying to understand where we go. Because it is hard to find employees hired that have experience, that have the knowledge that we need. It is extremely costly to train. I mean, I would say at least 6 months at a minimum for certain jobs, but there's certain jobs that people sitting in this room and take years of experience and training and courses to get them up to be able to do their full job without assistance from other employees to help them. And that's extremely costly. Anybody in this room or any of our employees that aren't here tonight would be way more costly than what it would invest to just invest in our good employees that come every day ready to work, knowing how to do the job, that don't take us additional training and work to get them up to that speed. well worth it. We have looked at, our neighboring communities many times over the last couple of years as far as their pay scales. And yes, our pay scales are very similar to our neighboring communities. The problem is that our neighboring communities pay that entire scale. So within 4, 5, 6 years of employment at our neighboring communities, you're making near the top end of that scale. And these employees, most of them sitting here that started after 2010, will never be able to make that. So our scale might look comparable, but what we're actually able to pay our employees is not comparable. And I know everyone sitting in this room knows that they can get up tomorrow and take a job at our neighboring communities and not only walk in the door making more money on day one, but make more money and increases each year. And you ask any of them, they say, because they love working here, they love their employees, they love the people they work with and the job they have. They don't want to leave only based on money. But I have heard it out of many people's voices and mouths over the last number of years that you can't stay forever just for a good place. At some point, the livelihood of their family and making enough money to support their family has to become more important.
So this is something that I think in terms of additional information that Lisa made reference to. We've heard of a couple of cases. I think what would be helpful for the board is if, in fact, as you were saying, Amber, if this is the norm for not just a couple of communities out there that are trying to be more, if this is the trend or the norm for more than just a couple of communities, the majority of those communities we compare ourselves with on a statewide that have similar property valuations as well as similar population, then I think that's a very good argument that we change. And instead of having a midpoint that defines the minimum requirements and just the job, an acceptable job to this payment, that we have that range that goes the full gamut and anticipating that every year an employee stays with the village of Grafton, he or she will grow and become a more valuable employee all the way up to that time. But I'm not sure we have all of that information.
Jesse, you said you're concerned with if people leave, you're concerned with recruitment. So you mentioned 2 people. I don't know if there was 1 or 2 up here at Village Hall. Well, did you have any trouble filling those spots? How was the applicant?
So far, the applicant pool, we've been very fortunate in that we've had some competitive, but it's not at the level it once was. The last public works crew person recruitment, that was fairly low. I don't recall the exact number of applications received, but that said, it was not the pool that we used to see. And again, I will sit here and say to the board, at this point in time, yes, recruitment clearly is part of this facet, but frankly, it is right now, I feel much more of a priority to retain. There are too many opportunities out there, whether it be private sector, because of the housing market. Take a look at the I-43 project and the trades associated with that, but also just the competitiveness with our nearby neighbors. Again, Germantown, Plymouth, Port Washington, a good portion of our workforce would not have to relocate in order to take a position in one of those communities. That being said, right now we've got an open recruitment for a firefighter paramedic. Now, granted, that's a little bit different situation because it's not part of this system we're talking here this evening, but similar, where we do have those steps available to them. That has now been open for 2.5 weeks, and we've gotten 0 applications for it. So it is a very, very competitive work environment.
Let's say utility clerk is a good example.
Oh,
3 in less than a year. Part of it was more paid comparable in the private sector. But talking about training, the training, we're spending 4 to 6 hours a day with a person for 4 or 5 months, trying to get our regular work done, plus getting that done. So as Amber said, the training is really where it takes them the time away from staff to assist people. I mean, once to the point of even coming here recommending that we farm that out, we go to a private contractor, so we don't have it in-house, we have to deal with that. Maybe we have this kind of structure that employee will save to seem to be working out really well, but the private sector offer was just too high. Our previous administrative assistant doubled her salary in the private sector,
Yes.
doing pretty much the same thing she does here. So recently left. So it's more, I don't look at it as dollars. You can't look at it as dollars. If you come from finance, that's the first thing I say, just, you can't afford it, it costs too much money, what's it gonna cost? It's about retention, it's about keeping people here employed. So we don't have to go through training, adding, hopefully, unnecessary, adding tasks that take away from primary. You guys out in the field, training people, is gonna make them as efficient, as effective as they are if they have fully trained staff, just like any other department, same thing with the police department, same thing. Doing development, and finance, getting a library, it's, I view it as beyond knowledge.
So, I'm just gonna say again, Jesse, I do feel like I need more information also. I mean, I know that you brought us these two specific job descriptions of employees and what they were making in other communities. There's probably, other examples of that.
Okay.
For other types of employees in the village. I mean, I do, I feel like I want a personnel schedule with different stages and what they're paid. And after the information, maybe I'll feel more comfortable with saying, yeah, absolutely. I see that across the board, that this is what we need to retain an employee. I mean, I know it's difficult everywhere. But I feel like I don't have enough information.
Okay, if it helps, as a point of clarification, this discussion and this compensation system isn't about the minimum to maximum. It isn't about the grade themselves. It's about the ability for our employees to actually move through the grade. Our grades, our pay grades, I believe about 18 months ago, we proved those are competitive, especially considering the village board's consideration of adjusting those pay grades in a given year. Since 2012, they've been adjusted each year where the minimum and maximum, it all shifts by a percentage. So what I have seen and understand in the conversations here with staff, but also those examples that I provided in those job ads or postings rather, our grades themselves are competitive. They're in the neighborhood. We're decent there. But what we are lacking is the ability for our folks to actually move through the entire pay grade. Right now, if we wanted to be very, very honest with folks and put a advertisement out there, we would advertise in essence that minimum to midpoint, because after that, it is a percentage of a percentage in which they move through the pay grade thereafter, where literally it would take decades upon decades to even get from the midpoint to the start of that fourth quartile. Because again, after that midpoint, it's a percentage of a percentage in merit whereby they move. So again, it's not about the scales, it's the movement through.
What is the current, percentage for once you get past midpoint?
Once you get past midpoint, you receive that January 1st, but then a merit, which is a percentage of that cost of living adjustment.
So that's all the information. This is not a salary survey study. All this is recognizing the fact that the village is progression through the pay scale doesn't work, because you can get a 2% or a 3%, but if the pay scale slides that same 2 or 3%, you have made no progress through the scale. There's no need to do a major study. The fact is, every pay scale we have is treated the same way, right? So it doesn't
Exactly
matter
right.
who you are, doesn't matter the job that you have, the pay scale that we have at just merit past midpoint is blanket covers everybody that we is unrepresented. That's what we are trying to fix.
That's really consistent with the federal pay scale as well. And, we can't compare apples to oranges, but in this case, federal pay scale moves very quickly through the first trimester of your employment. So for your first 3 years, you get an increase every year to be able to move to the next pay scale. The second 3 years, you move up every 2 years. Your final 3 pay steps are through every 3 years through year 7, 8, and 9. So if you're basically asking, you know, what other entities have out there, which is a quicker movement, a quicker sprint up to midpoint, which keeps those new employees who we end up training and who may end up deciding to go to Port or to Plymouth or wherever, and we provide those municipalities with trained employees.
5,000, I mean, cost to train, the cost to retain infinitely smaller than the cost to recruit. It's so much cheaper to keep your people than it is to find. Hiring manager, back day in and day out. Final comment?
I have a question. So is there no opportunity to even ask to table it to get more information?
I guess the question would be, what additional information? would you use?
I just asked, I want to know, I mean, I personally would like to know what the other surrounding communities are doing. I mean, that's just what I would like to know. I don't know. I'm still interested. I don't know. I would just like to know. I mean, I know in big organizations, this is not happening in big organizations, you know, with a ton of employees. Don't think it's happening at the medical college, and I know it's not happening at, well, it's not happening at Aurora. So, I mean, those are just questions that I have, and if the board's not interested in that, then I understand.
I think we can do any of that. I don't think it has any bearing on the fact that we have no mechanism to get people past midpoint. And it doesn't really, if we can't treat or acknowledge the fact that we're not using the whole pay scale. And we're just gonna keep on saying we're only going to promote or we're going to accelerate people to midpoint, then let's just advertise that as our pay grade. It's minimum to midpoint, that's as far as we go. That is the fundamental issue that's right before us tonight. People can get to midpoint and they can't get past midpoint. It doesn't matter what anybody else.
But Jim, you're assuming that the majority of other communities out there, just because we've had a defections, that the majority of other communities out there have gotten rid of their midpoint definition of doing the job and getting paid for that job. That everyone will migrate up to the top of their base.
But Tom, didn't you hear that, that Fort Washington in fact did do that in the last, Fort Washington? Yes. And they're advertising at a point where, well, they're, you know, they're, the other, if I can finish saying my extra question, that if we look at the fact that we've lost employees or made the adjustment and our department heads are asking for that ability to recruit and retain. We're sitting here saying, well, you know, we need more facts, we need more data. The actuality is that it didn't happen. It has happened.
All right, my response is that in some of these cases, we're talking about people who wanted to not just increase their pay, but they wanted increased responsibility and maybe even a different pay grade altogether. I know there's different drivers for each employee.
If I may, I think there's a level of parity here to consider as well. We've got represented police officers that can move through their entire pay scale. We've got non-represented firefighter paramedics that have the opportunity to move through their entire pay scale. The remainder of the non-represented folks here in the village of Grafton don't have that opportunity. There is a level of parity here. We have two small groups that do have that opportunity, do have that vehicle to move from point A to point B, where the rest of our non-represented folks don't. So I think that's just something else to consider as part of this. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of manage our workforce as an employee of the community. So when we look at what is in front of us. It's a result of feedback, and observations that has come up through the administrator, who's looked at an issue. He's come up with a solution. It is viable. He's worked it out with finance. It does seem to address the fundamental issue that's in front of us. And I think that, it is a policy issue, but I think it's a policy issue that addresses a fundamental flaw in how we can address these. All right, I'm gonna call the question. We have a motion, a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Show of hands, all in favor? 5, against, show 2 on Zoom. That motion passes 5-2. Thank you all very much. Let's move on to item D, Board of Parks and Recreation. We have one item, there's a motion toward the Centennial Ball Field project to Hutchinson Property Services for an amount not to exceed $13,000. The fund balance from the Park and Open Space Fund be approved.
I'll move to approve.
Second, all in favor? Opposed? That motion passes. We want to item 7, officers reports. Justin, like to talk.
Sure, just a few items here this evening. Vast majority of our summer staff is now gone for the season. We do have one gentleman who's a retired police officer who has stayed on staff with us to help out with grass cutting, tree watering and whatnot. But that said, you may see regular full-time employees helping out, trying to keep up with grass cutting. Because unfortunately, the dry weather has not stayed with us. And so that will remain a task at hand for the time being. I did report late last week that the Paramount Plaza fountain is down. The pumps are out for repair. We had one pump go down. The auxiliary pump kept the fountain going. We pulled the first, working on a repair. That second one failed. So the fountain is completely out of commission right now. That being said, we have our gentleman who has worked on these pumps in the past, looking at them, trying to rebuild them. If it turns out to either be cost ineffective or simply can't be done, we may be looking at a straight up replacement of these 2 pumps. That being said, there is a slight possibility that we may be looking at an early winterization of that fountain. We are trying to avoid that because we know it fall into Grafton coming up and events downtown. So we are trying to avoid that. But that said, we are working hard to get the pumps either repaired or replaced as quickly as we can. Last but not least, just a quick update for the board that we will be advertising for the public as well. Fire hydrant flushing will commence next week. Notices will be posted in the usual fashion. So if there's any discolored water, what to do, who to call, what have you. But it's a pretty big deal throughout the village in case you get any phone calls starting next week with hydrant flushing kicking off. So just a few updates this evening.
Just Paul, anything you wish to add?
Jesse, I had a citizen contact me out in the street, asking a question about how to get a hold of committee members. Their names are listed on the website. The example somebody gave me was they wanted to contact somebody in Public Works. And there's actually no contact information for any of the committee members.
Okay.
There's only contact, which I didn't realize. It's
I said
only
either.
under the village board that when you click on their name, it's highlighted. It says email. And I think under our bio, it said phone number.
Okay.
So the citizen couldn't call somebody on Public Works and ask them a question or tell them their comment about something that was coming up. And they were the citizen members,
Okay.
but nobody's names
Sure.
have contact information.
Okay.
And I didn't really know that, and I figured it.
Frankly, I didn't.
Yeah.
I would have to check with the clerk's office on that and see if there's any historical practice
They
there or
could
what have you.
add
But
because
yeah,
they were-
Yep.
So my only other thing was, the dog paddle day, Chad, was amazing. It was very crowded. The only thing that was a little bit amiss, I thought, was that little pool, the kiddie pool was full of a lot of dirty water.
Yeah, and we actually went through and drained that a couple times this summer, just kind of filled up over time.
Yeah,
It doesn't work properly
Yeah.
anymore, and we need to figure out what we want to do with that going forward.
yeah, so maybe next year, either we need to close that off, because there were a lot of dogs in that water, it can't be safe. Drinking it, splashing in it, when they have the whole big pool that they. So that's a concern I have.
Okay, do we want
Move on to item 8 licenses. Motion for approval of 2 individuals. License.
Make a motion.
to second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Item 9, report of the bill, entertain a motion for approval of village expenses, $702,960.89. Motion is second. I saw the traditional back and forth questions. Any further comments, questions on the bill?
Jesse, there was something on there about, new tires for a,
Yes, sir.
one tire had some damage or nails or whatever.
Mhm.
We have one bad tire, but we buy 4. Now, I know if I have a flat tire with my car, I replace the tire.
Mhm.
I don't replace all 4.
We actually had 2 tires go bad with
Alright,
nails
so
in
then
them.
I
Yep.
would Replace 2, not 4.
Correct. And the vendor we normally work with, I spoke with Chief Caponera at length about this earlier today. The vendor did not have a full set of matching tires. And because these are pursuit rated, that is part of wanting a full set of matching tires. So therefore, a full set was bought. The old undamaged to the old ones, the undamaged to were retained for emergency use. That way, at least we have something in inventory should we pick up a nail again and have to wait for a full set to come in. But again, that was the approach we took. So, yeah, and received state contract pricing for it. So it was well below customary pay, what I would pay to go in and get a set of tires.
So one of the questions I had, with our vascular service at the utility. And I guess from the answer, it is monthly service
During the summer months, they've been doing this,
just during the summer months.
right?
Okay. So, okay.
And
That's
we're
not
gonna,
always bad because it's still a lot of money.
What
it was. So we'll reevaluate for next year, and we probably won't do it again. That's already, we're already discussing the expense of it. So,
I know you have a lot of wells or
and the lift station,
stations that you're using it for.
right,
Certainly, there's a lot of articulations that happen down at the treatment plant as well.
right.
But we do have people that, for maybe an hour of that once a week, certainly make the rooms look a little bit more presentable. I think that's what we're doing. And I did pick up the other explanations on how they made here during the SCADA operation as well. So I want to make sure that you reevaluate it, getting value for that item.
Absolutely.
All right, that being said, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 10 is a motion to convene the closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 1985-1E, negotiating the purchasing of public properties, and investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And this is starting at the Town of Cedarburg and in agreement.
I'll make the motion for a full session.
Second. Second.
Aye.
The closed session, the expected time in closed session.
It is going to be a little bit of discussion. I would probably look at 20-25 minutes.
25 minutes. We should. Session. Thank you all for coming.